Man, I think you'll find out whether or not you're passionate about it,
Hmm.
because like you have to be, particularly if you're starting, if you're bootstrapping your way into this world.
Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Creative Haven. I'm here with the super talented Andrew Miller from Austin, and I saw Andrew's Doc's website and actually his reel online or his work online and was really impressed. And I'm always about just talking with fellow filmmakers and DPs and creatives. And it's always a treat just to nerd out on film, cinematography, and documentaries. But I'm gonna let Andrew talk more about, where did you come from and tell us more about your history and how you got to where you are today.
Yeah, great. Well, thanks for having me on, and I can nerd out with you. If that's what we need to do today, then I should rise to the
We're
occasion.
geeking out, my friend.
Yeah. Okay. Well, so I mean, I've been here for a long time. I went to the University of Texas and to the film program there,
Nice.
and so I've been in Austin even since before then. And in terms of how I started getting into a creative pursuit, I mean, I always knew I wanted to do it, or at least in high school, I had come to the realization that I either wanted to be a filmmaker or a pilot.
Nah,
And
okay.
yeah, I still want to be a pilot, so I'm
You could
working
just
on
do
that.
drone footage.
I do that, and it's a little taste, but not quite the real thing.
That's right.
Yeah, basically, the first move I made was to go into the army so that I could get to
Mm.
college. Was sort of my loose plan back then, and had nothing to do with filmmaking or any kind of creativity. It was tanks. I mean, I guess there's some creativity somewhere in there, but and I did that for 4 years, and then moved to Texas at the end of that
Yeah.
4 year stint. But that was 2003. The war had just begun, so I kind of got
Mm.
brought back in via the National Guard. There's a lot of details, probably not worth going over. But then I became a journalist, and so what the
Wow.
Army calls a journalist. So I was doing photography and writing stories, and then also
Nice.
acting editor. And so yeah, I got a little bit of chops before I got into the RTF program at UT. And in
Mm.
fact, I think probably some of those experiences is why they accepted my application to go there in the first place. And then is this boring? Are we good? You want
No,
to
no, no.
on?
I'm letting you talk because I don't want to interrupt you because all the questions in my mind is like so planes to tanks to journalism and PR and it's an interesting
Yeah,
story. So
yeah, kind of like that. I was a realtor while I was in college too. I'm trying to do like a George Washington type of thing, just do a little dabble,
yeah,
and end up as president of the United States.
you go good because I
Just
think
kidding.
we need
I do
that.
not want
We need a filmmaker as a president because then everything else would just be more interesting, more innovative solutions to hard problems.
perhaps. Um, anyway,
Which
not me though. I'm just playing. I don't want to be president.
which is storyboard every single solution.
Kid president. Those are kind of funny. Did you ever see any of those?
No, no, I haven't.
Oh, yeah, it's a YouTube series. Kid president. It's cute. Okay, so let's finish up
Yeah, so
the
you went to RTF, you
yeah,
went back
yeah.
to school. They accepted you because you had such a dynamic background of flying, well, wanting to fly planes, but knowing how
It
to
had
use
nothing to do
tank.
with no, I think just having the experience of being a journalist in the war was probably made an application stand out as
Oh,
my
hell yeah.
hypothesis. But anyway, so I went through college fairly quickly. I interned with the Austin Film Society here in town, and
Hell
if
yeah.
anybody is listening from Austin, it's a great organization, been around and kind of very much part of the foundation of the film industry here. And so through that, I got a job even before I graduated college on True Grit. So it's a
Hell
Paramount
yeah.
movie, Coen Brothers movie, right? It was kind of a dream come true for
Cowboy
me.
movie, Western.
Yeah, yeah, and remake, but I didn't really like the experience,
Ooh.
and that's not nothing to do with any of the people or the movie. Even it was just kind of the taking stock of what it looked like to make a career sort of through the union route, and really even in
Mm,
large studio movies, which is
right.
that's what I just assumed I was going for, and then I was fortunate enough to get it, or at least to get a crack at it, and but I just it just wasn't for me, and I knew that right away. So
Hmm.
really, like within 2 weeks, I knew it. It was kind of wild. So I did another one of those. I worked over on at Troublemaker Studios doing Spy Kids 4,
Hell yeah. Robert
another
Rodriguez.
illustrious film, And so anyway, yeah, it just kind of confirmed that. And so at that point, I looked around, and Austin's a unique industry too. Like there's back then there was more things going on in terms of studio films than there are now. But even then it wasn't, it looked like a pretty limited set of work.
Yeah.
But even aside from that, I just wasn't feeling the fulfillment. So I kind of made my way into just working independently, working commercially, and then also doing documentaries basically with friends, and then sort
Oh
of
yeah.
easing into that as a profession.
That's amazing. And then is that why docs basically is the
The
short form of
moniker, yeah,
documentaries? Yeah.
yeah,
So
yeah, that
then,
was
so,
the
yeah. And so, you have such a great background because the idea of being a journalist, especially a photojournalist, you have to capture images like run and gun
mm,
without, of course, having
quite literally
sticks.
running and with
Yeah,
guns.
with a
And that,
gun. Yeah, wow, that's a double whammy and just quite the stressful situation. And then how has that really helped you? What inspired the way that you actually capture images now and actually influence you on how you handle a camera, to tell you the truth?
oh, I mean, it's just so another aspect of that too is writing, which is so you're sort of in the way that I do now as a cinematographer, you're sort of thinking about telling a story with those images,
Yeah.
and even kind of editing in your head a little bit with what you need to facilitate the other pieces of it. So yeah, I mean, I don't know. I look back on it and I just think of it as good training for
Hmm.
basic things like composition, but also even, we were shooting on a similar sensor size as what I shoot on now. So just learning how to focus,
Hmm.
on the fly like that is just training in those areas.
No
And then like,
autofocus.
we had autofocus. We were shooting stills, but those were, I mean, that was the earliest days of digital still.
Yeah.
Maybe not quite the earliest days, but we were shooting on Nikon D1s. So I had a D1X and a D1H,
Hmm.
and I bought a D70S if I recall around the time. So yeah, just training. You're thinking about, I mean, just really basic concepts like headroom. What do I like? What's the
Yeah.
appropriate kind of headroom? What just all of the things that go into makeup composition, and but then also some focus and a little bit of lighting. We did some flash photography as well, but yeah.
Nice. And so you were on the set of True Grit, also Spy Kids
Mm,
4, and you just
mhm.
found out it wasn't for you. I totally resonate with that because that's how I was too when Hollywood. And I remember just looking at the set, like the set life as a PA or as a grip wasn't for me.
Yeah,
For me, it was I had to be the director or producer. And so
yeah, that's exactly the feeling I had sitting in the production office. I looked up and I saw the Coen brothers office, and I saw their producer Bob Graff's office. And I'm like, what's the path to those offices? And
exactly. I
I
want to be
and
there.
they're look yeah. Well, I mean, but really, like, how do you get there? And the what I came to was, I don't think you really do it by taking any of these jobs. I don't think that's you notice a little bit of movement from maybe like somehow the locations guys end up producing or whatever it
Hmm.
is, but that looked like a long, bumpy road in an environment that I wasn't really enjoying. So I just
Nice.
decided
It's
to
so
flip the
true.
chessboard.
Yeah, because it's I remember because being in LA, it's always, you got to go PA, and then you got to figure out if you want to go to the camera department, do you want to go into, of course, be a grip, do you want to also do set design, you want to just write, you want to be a producer, you want to be a page. There's so many different things that you would want to do, and there's like a specific route, right? From my route, it was the producing route, where I was started off as like, a development producer's assistant, development executive. Then from there, I became a manager. From that point, it's like you find your own projects, attach yourself to produce, try to sell those projects, or
Mm,
you try to develop a script, package it, sell it, become the manager, sell a few, projects, have your client attach you as a producer. Or there's like different ways now where you can make it happen, where you can just have a lot of money and then just create a movie,
yeah,
or you can be a really great friend of a director and a writer and just say, hey, let me just hop on as a producer, and then from there you can be their producer for their future projects when they blow up.
yeah,
it's
yeah.
it's it's so many different paths. Like, did you find you learned that in film school, or was it something that you learned after you graduated?
Yeah, no, not at all. I don't think
Right.
I really learned any pragmatic, like career type of things in film school. I mean, I definitely learned how to make films, or at least,
Yep.
got my beak wet a little bit. But But in terms of like, I gave this critique to the chair of the department as I left. Told him I had a great experience and enjoyed it very much, but I would have recommended that there's more audio training, and because I think I took one class, and I was very production oriented. I was taking as much, getting as much production experience as I could. And then the other thing was like, do these kids know how to send invoices? Do they even know what an invoice is? Because
Oh
like there should
man.
be some very basic kind of entrepreneurial types of skills. Because I, looking at the market that I was about to enter into, because I knew I was staying in Austin at the time. It looked like, freelance was gonna. As I said, I was the only person I knew from the Film Society, and even at UT that got a job on True Grit. So it's like those jobs were very hard to come by, and then even more so nowadays. So
Yeah.
I was looking at the landscape and thinking, yeah, there's no real job training. And fortunately, while I was in college, I had a job and I was working as an independent contractor, so I'd kind of figured out some basic business stuff.
Yeah, I mean, that's a great actually segue to the idea of film school. And is it worth it now to actually go to film school and invest that type of money, or to actually just pick up a camera, learn on YouTube, learn from mentors, hop on sets, and then actually learn more about business and marketing and sales to grow a business? And the creative side is something that you can actually do as a as you can invest in training online. You can actually get experience with other people who put you on jobs. Like, what are your thoughts on film school now? Is it something that's worth going to, or do you think it's antiquated?
It's definitely antiquated in certain ways, but that doesn't mean you won't get value out of it.
Yeah.
So I think for me, my opinion, and the only experience I have is the University of Texas. I'm sure that there's more kind of job market oriented programs out there, but I think that it's worth going. Is funny because like the Army paid for me to go to school, so yeah,
Hmm.
definitely worth that. It cost me almost nothing. Um, and so, well, I don't know, you got rich parents, then it's probably worth it to you to go to film school. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It all depends on the sacrifices you got to make. But
That's
I would
right.
say if what you're trying to do is trade it for a job, I have found no one, not one time have I ever been asked for my resume. And
Hmm.
that's not true. Occasionally they'll ask for a CV or something like that. But those, I already know that that's a job that I don't want. Those are anomalous. I'm like,
Right.
look
That's
at
a
my
desk
reel. You
job.
know what I mean? Just, why are you calling me? Do you want me to show up tomorrow or not? You know what I mean? Like, what is it? So yeah, it's just not really relevant in terms of a job. What's relevant is I think primarily it's your network.
That's
And
right.
so, you got to start building that. And even if you do decide to go to film school, and this is advice that I give the kids, you start working immediately, start getting jobs as soon as you can, start, gaining that experience, building that network and doing all the things. Cause the work is what gets you more work. And first you get crappier opportunities, and hopefully eventually your opportunities get better and better as time goes on and your skills get sharper and your network improves and all that stuff.
That's right. I mean, that's the question right now. A lot of kids who are asking about the college route, especially when it comes to film school, because the amount of online training and, of course, YouTube and the availability of cameras. I mean, you can get a
Mm.
4K camera for $1,000 these
Oh yeah.
days, and you can get a gimbal, you can get some lenses for about 2K total. And you could be
Yeah.
knocking out some beautiful videos without any film school training at all.
Yeah.
Um,
Nobody's even going to know whether or not you have.
I know.
So,
It, yeah,
but just not to close the door on film school
of
totally,
course.
because I enjoyed it very much. Like I really, I think it's going to be one of these little slivers of my life that I look back on very fondly. I'll tell you, there's nothing like the Army to kind of cultivate some appreciation for a college life as a
Right,
college.
right.
Um, it's a pretty good time. And then aside from being a good time, yeah, I learned a ton. You're there to study. You're there to watch movies, talk about movies like for hours and hours every day. And so you're not going to get nothing out of that. You're going to
Yeah.
get an education, and I appreciate. And I miss it even, like sometimes I occasionally think about grad school and stuff, and really just for the learning, to go and sort of force yourself to be immersed and to have to study on a deep level.
Yeah.
So it's definitely got value, but I just would say that it's not really all that pertinent to the job discussion. If what you want to do is work, particularly as a freelancer, kind of in the gig economy. College has nothing to do with it.
Yeah. And I tell people that too when they ask me about, is it worth to go to film school? And I like it because of the network, like you said,
Hmm.
also
Hmm.
the education, the cinematic techniques, the
Sure.
history, the theory, and also it's the access to the equipment. And as a student, there's something that I did not take advantage of, and I wish I did, was actually they had so much equipment for me to use.
Mm.
Instead of partying, I should have actually taken that equipment, shot some short films, actually gone to some local businesses and say, hey, I would love to do a free film for you and use these. I mean, this was
Yeah.
back when the cameras weren't as accessible. I mean, there was
Yeah.
still DV tapes and PD-150s, and it was.
Uh-huh.
I mean, I remember still filming on 16 millimeter and having to go to Kodak and develop my film. But that's the one thing I do tell a lot of kids, that if you go to film school, don't take the resources for granted.
Mm.
And when you actually going back to the army, I mean,
Yeah.
did your time in the army give you some great teachings and I guess routines and habits that have transferred over to being a creative?
Yeah, I mean, just to life in general. I just one other thought on the previous topic was just to say that one of those resources that you can take advantage of when you're in film school is a large pool of able-bodied, kids who are into the idea of helping you on
Exactly.
your film, because
Exactly.
that's hard, man. Labor, like, is expensive. It's a good half your budget or whatever, and um, I had around that time in my life, I had a couple sets where I might have had 50 people working for
Hmm.
me for free. You know what I mean? And
Yep.
that I wouldn't even dare to ask anymore. Although I know some professors who, might put that together. So academia is really good for that. But anyway, in terms of the skills that the Army cultivated in me, yeah, absolutely. The way I like to describe it, or, kind of in shorthand, I just say I don't think I enjoyed a day of the Army, which is definitely an exaggeration, but I don't regret it at all. And the same thing is true going to war, as well, like sort of within that experience. But yeah, man, I mean, yeah, teach you how to get up in the morning, how to, sort of like they kind of pull any ability for you to make excuses for anything. You know what I mean? It's like all that's out.
Mhm.
You just complete the mission and, do what it takes, and you discover some things about how much energy you really have, how deep the well is. And so there are all sorts of kind of just broad life skills and
Mhm.
I guess, personal characteristics or whatever that are drawn out, and they can. So this is another question: should kids join the Army? That's a
Oh, that is another question too, especially what nowadays, what are your thoughts on that?
gosh, I don't even know what the Army's like anymore. My guess is that it's a lot easier than it used to be.
Hmm.
I think it's kind of like moving to Austin. They've been saying that every generation who went to the Army said kids these days have it so easy, But I was definitely witnessing some of the kind of more difficult aspects being kind of like taken away from the drill sergeants, for example,
Mhm.
in terms of their ability to rain down on these kids. But no, I don't know. I don't know what they join the Air Force. Do that. That's what I told my little brother. Much better.
Gotcha. I admire a lot of the books out, of course, like David Goggins and like
Yeah.
Jocko Willink, and a lot of those books coming out about leadership and grit and tenacity when it
Yeah.
comes to work and entrepreneurship. And how has
Mm.
that, we talk about being a creative and what you learn for life skills. How has it helped you with your business?
Yeah, for
Now.
sure. Yeah. So I'll tell you, like, I think when I went to the Spy Kids movie, um,
Mhm.
this is kind of a convoluted story, but it was a union movie and I wasn't in the union, right? So it's
Mhm.
hard to get through that first step, right? And you have to find the guy who doesn't care about the union rep breathing down his neck, who's willing to hire you anyway. And so I
Right.
found the guy, and one of the reasons he hired me was because of my Army experience, and more specifically, he had a scissor lift, I think, that wasn't working properly. It has hydraulics on it, and he just assumed that my tank experience was going to transfer to that, even though I wasn't a tank mechanic, right? When my tank breaks down, I would take it to the mechanic. So no, the reputation of veterans, I guess, that carries a little bit of weight. People think they know things about you, if you
Mhm.
served, and typically those traits are favorable. So yeah, and some of it's true. Some of it's true. It's not true for every soldier.
Yeah. Of course.
There's some all types in the army. So you don't know anything about somebody just because of that. But yeah, it's you can kind of use that experience. I mean, obviously we're talking about it now, right? It's part of my narrative about myself, and yeah.
So when it comes to finding the stories in brands, because now we're talking about more of how your story has really helped you shape who you are today, film school, army, journalism, photography. When you are digging into a brand story, and like a founder story or whatever it is, when you talk to a brand, how do you get that story out of them so you can tell it authentically?
I'm not sure I have a great answer for you here.
Google searching and Wikipedia and LinkedIn.
Yeah, I mean, so mainly I'm just not that interested in this type of work so much. But obviously, I've done a good amount of corporate work, and I've taught myself, especially over the pandemic, we started to get more into the strategy side of things, because it occurred to me that while it was difficult for, they weren't letting me on set, or there was no set to go to. Well, what do people need, and just kind of researching. My wife is in corporate communications, and I just got her whole network is, there's some overlap, and I just do a lot of corporate work. So anyway, the things that corporate marketers and the people who would hire me to work on their brand stories and things like that, or brand stories for their clients or whatever it is, they seem to struggle most with having a cohesive strategy that's going to guide them through the entire process, from kind of concept to distribution, and then measurement, because they love, and their bosses love data and measurement, and they want to prove ROI on some of these things that are pretty slippery. It's particularly when you're talking about branding, right, which is just you're not talking about driving sales up on a given channel or whatever
on a video ad.
Yeah, you're talking about branding, which is complicated and hard to manage. So I'm not a CMO. I don't have that deep of knowledge about it, but I just follow I just built a little 60-minute consultation where I would ask a ton of targeted questions, and try to help people figure out what they want, because often they don't even know what they want. And sometimes they've got sort of like a handful of bullets that say this project is about this, and they're just like bad ideas. So you gotta exercise those demons sometimes. But it's you just take people come with different levels of preparation, different sort of teams that you're working with, and they may be more or less prepared in a given area. So you just have to kind of figure out what they're lacking. And I mean, basically, I'm just trying to, there's so many bad ideas out there. I'm trying to mitigate as many of those as I can, and then we emerge with something that's hopefully, good, effective, and does what they want it to do. And sometimes you have to help them figure out what they want it to do in the first place, or clarify that.
It's a question I always ask people when they have agencies or production companies. The idea when it comes to, how do you also talk to a business owner or a CMO, the value of creativity, because you brought up a point about branding, a video of its branding, like it's a founder's video or like a mission and vision video, or something that doesn't have to do with driving sales or conversions for a specific problem or product. Some businesses will think of that as just fluff, or as just some kind of just extra cost for the marketing department that actually has no ROI. How do you explain, or just convince to some clients how the importance of having a story, a strong story for a branded video, which in turn down the line will bring in ROI or some benefits that aren't quantifiable at first?
Yeah, well, let's see. So I think take this in a couple parts. I think when we're talking about a video specifically, that's all I'm talking about is story and character, basically, right? These are the two things that we need to make something that's going to make people's eyes pop. You got to look for those things and know what you're doing. Particularly we do a lot of branded doc content these days, and documentary is more my forte. So that's where I end up. And things can get a little loose, and and you need to help folks to find that. But if I'm getting into a conversation with like if my company is getting into a conversation with people about their brands, and we're like at the conceptual level, I'm in the wrong room, honestly. Like, just to be perfectly honest, it's if you're the type of business that is working directly with me as opposed to through an agency, you're probably a smaller company that is much better suited focusing on, like, specific sales and kind of direct sales marketing things, as opposed to branding. So I think branding belongs to a larger company. That's the type of thing you have to be fairly sophisticated with your marketing and doing. And so there will always be an agency, a larger agency between myself and a company that's going to be able to do that right. If there isn't, I'm probably, they're wanting to spend more than what I'm going to even ask them to spend, or otherwise they don't have anywhere near the budget to think about branding and doing that over time. And I mean, they're going to have a different marketer in that slot next year or whatever. Their marketing team of 2 or whatever is not, it's just, branding is not what they should be focusing on. They should be focusing on revenue.
Exactly.
But yeah, I'm probably
nice. No, that's a good answer. No, I like that answer, because yeah, because when you talk to different production company owners and freelancers and people who are getting into the game, there are several types of people who do, of course, the commercial production, right? You're going like $500,000, $1 million above budgets. You're going all union. You're doing broadcast commercials, 30-second, 15-second spots. And then you have, of course, the wedding videographers, the people who are just run and gun. They've got 2 people, a couple of photographers, and they do same day edits, right? And their whole thing is like, make a story out of the wedding and the couple and make them cry at the end. And then, of course, you have the people who, like myself, who's in the mid range of, like, working with companies who do want to drive conversions and sales through video ads. And at the same time, people who are interested in those branded videos. And so certain companies who want to hire production companies, you have to know what the goals are with the video. If you're already making money, this is something that I'm working with a friend right now, because he does deal with broadcast commercials. He does commercials for Amazon, The Ring, ZipRecruiter. The marketing message isn't, we make videos to help you make money. They're like, we already make money, buddy. So it's like, we just have millions of dollars to spend. We just want to be, establish our position in the industry and in our community, that we are the authority. So we're going to create these videos just to remind you and be on top of mind. We don't care. We do care about making money, but these videos aren't it. We have like 1,000-person sales force to do that. And so, it's interesting to think about how you do that for other companies, right? But then how about, for your own, we were talking about this, before this, about the idea how you're transferring from, different companies. So,
well, I've spent plenty of time trying to build, to build my own brand. And I think I said or mentioned this earlier, but what I've determined is that for a company my size, or at least maybe it's my skill set and abilities, but for me, investing time in building my network sort of directly, like in a face-to-face way, or something close to that, as opposed to just kind of shotgunning information and doing branding things I think about when you say branding. I'm wasting my time. If I'm over here building the network, that's where it all comes from. And then, so that was when I was trying to build the brand, right? And now I'm more like, I kind of like my network, and I like the amount of work that's coming my way, and how it's just sort of on autopilot, and it affords me the life I like. I like to ride my bikes, I like to go to Deep Eddy, in the middle of the day or whatever. So if I can make that work sometimes, during the week, great. That's what I'm after now.
Nice. And so when you are creating these ideas and also working on your own brand, how do you get into your creative flow state? Like, how do you actually get into that creative zone so that you can actually either create that pitch, write that story, or shoot that amazing scene on the day of on set?
Yeah. So I don't really do it deliberately. I either rise to it or I don't. But I think so in a way, it's what I mean to say is it's not totally conscious or deliberate. It's just sort of
Right.
like if I'm actually passionate about something, it's going to kind of happen. I think I haven't really studied this that much to where I have like a sophisticated understanding of it, but my take on flow and like being really well, it's essentially the same thing as focus. Like if you're really intensely focused, that's when you get into it. So I mentioned bikes just a moment ago. Yeah, just not thinking, right? Like you're reacting, you're sort of, yeah, fully engaged, very, very, very focused. That's anyway, when I think about flow, that's what I'm thinking about.
Hell yeah.
So in terms of work, I think I get into that. So I do a lot of live events, and often live events with a multicam setup, right? So I might be the director of photography for that and have a team of people that I'm working with, and very often, most often, I'll also be on a camera. And so you can just imagine like a 7-camera multicam music shoot, right? So it's live, it's only happening once, there's an audience there. You've got a director, maybe a technical director, everybody's on headsets. And you're all kind of talking with each other, and the director's calling the shots. Like that's definitely a situation where you get into flow, where you're just, and again, I think I attribute it to just having to have intense focus, right? Like fully kind of committed to what's going on and reacting to it. So the camera operator is sort of a little bit of a dance, right? And sometimes literally you're kind of dancing when you're doing music and stuff. But how do I get in there? You wait, your heart starts to beat a little bit, the countdown begins, the director gives a little pep talk, and then you're off and running, and you better just get there.
Yeah.
Stop thinking, start working.
That's right. I mean, for the cinematographers, camera ops, and DPs out there, what have you learned on set when you get in those high stress situations? It's kind of like your step-by-step like to-do list before you get on set or before you start shooting. Like,
oh yeah, I mean, yeah. So preparation is key. That's one thing I learned in film school. There's a former professor, now a colleague and friend, who I remember him saying early on, preparation is either key or king, he said back then. But and I took that very seriously, because every time I showed up to set, there was prep that had more prep that needed to be done than what I had done. And so I've found that over now 10 or 12 years or so, it's always that way. There's always more you can do to prepare. So basically you spend as much time as you can, and if you're working underneath of a budget, as much as you can afford to spend, answering all your questions before you get to set, so that when you get on set, everything is focused on execution. Inevitably there will be more things, more questions, curveballs that are thrown, particularly in the nonfiction world. But all the better that you've answered these other questions that you might have predicted. So yeah, preparation. Having I don't actually really use checklists much, because it's sort of all in there, but you just want to make sure you're fully prepared, all your equipment's checked out. I say that as my equipment failed me today for this situation, but
what happened to the preparation there, Andrew?
It worked yesterday.
You know what? We blame it on the internet.
Yeah, it's the internet.
It's the internet.
This is a new office.
Exactly.
Ghosts in here.
No, I'm with you, Andrew. The whole idea of preparation before a shoot, it's so key. I mean, it's sometimes you say it's common sense, but sometimes there are people who just don't understand it. And to you, as doing nonfiction and for brands, what have you found is kind of your go-to shot list? I mean, I'm sure brands always ask you, what are you going to shoot? They probably trust you at this point, right? But for you, when you try to, create a vision in your mind of what you had to create that day, especially for nonfiction, where you don't have that many takes. Sometimes you're just on set and you got to do like an establishing, and you got to get some close-ups. Yeah. So what have you found is kind of like your go-to shot list for something like that?
It all depends on the story. I like to do things. I like to design a style for a given piece, right? And so that style could be different than the last one. So that's not really, doesn't come in checklist, except that it sort of does, in the sense of, basically I have a whole set of documents that guide me through the process of, sort of the creative side and the concepting work, right? And then you get into the writing and pre-production, And so at a certain point, I'll have a script, and in nonfiction, I might use like a 2-column script where I'm
Yep.
looking at all the words in one column, and then I'm thinking about images and sounds in another. Um, so, that falls, we've already done some stylistic work in terms of, what this is going to look and feel like. And then from there, you try to, set those images up ahead of time. And, it's documentary, when I'm working for other people, it's very often I'm getting, okay, go do this interview, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then here's a list of B-roll shots, basically.
That's right.
So it's kind of the two things, interviews and B-roll. And personally, and I think this is, a lot of people would probably say something similar, but you want to minimize those interviews and, tell a visual story, right?
Yeah.
But again, you're always up against some kind of budget. It's like usually when I'm being hired to do stuff, it's the priority goes on the sort of raw meat content of the interview. We need to capture this sound and also the person on screen. And then with what time we have left, like, please go rattle off some B-roll shots we'd like these, and occasionally I get hired just to go out and do B-roll, but
B-roll. Good old
yeah,
second unit.
I got some good solutions to that. I got some good tech stuff. So that's really what I'm in this for, is for the toys, for the
Yeah.
kids, all that kind of stuff. And man, I'm like a B-roll machine these days.
I love it. I love it. So what is your kit right now? What would you say is your go-to B-roll kit, run and gun? You don't have a studio or lights, you're outdoors, exteriors, batteries only.
Yeah, I mean, so I run around most of the time. I'm holding my camera, which is, I have a C300 Mark II, and
yes,
the lens I like on there is a 18-80, which is
there you go.
There, but that's a great focal length, and it's a T4, which is I can stop down enough. I can get pretty much anything shot on that. And then I like to work the gimbals, and I like to work the drones and kind of do things, and that's when I shine, because when I get the gimbal out, I can have like a whole situation where I've got basically like an exoskeleton support. I've got the gimbal itself, which the camera rides on, and then I've got a Segway, and then along with that, car mounts and various other things I can like put that on to keep that motion buttery smooth. And man, I can hose down some whatever you want, and that's a good B-roll right there.
Have you ever stacked on the Segway?
How do you mean stacked?
What, have you ever fallen on?
Oh, no, I've come off of it, but I've never come off my feet so
okay,
far.
good.
Yeah. It doesn't go that fast. I've, those one wheel things.
That's okay. Yeah, I've seen the one wheels, and I've seen
my cousin.
I've seen someone bail hard on it, and it was he dropped the camera, and I'm like, I'm never gonna do that. I'm not doing that.
It's not. So the Segway is just it's a relatively stable platform that goes half the speed, and which is already, like, the Segway at top speed is way faster than I want to go most of the time.
Yeah,
with a camera, right? You're trying to do a dolly move, basically, is what you're doing. So dollies don't go 20 miles an hour,
Yeah.
And maybe you're trying to replicate a cable cam or something. Yeah, and I got the drone. We get the drone out there, man. Can't go wrong with that for some establishing shots. Just big wide scenics and whatnot.
Love it. So do you feel now, like, with everything you have, what we talked about today, and I know you're a busy person with a company and you have to go soon, like, do you feel like now, if you can tell someone some advice from being a filmmaker and a film student who wants to get into the career, that what a great career path would be, or like, what would your advice be to someone, like 10 years, your advice to yourself, someone who wanted to be in the filmmaking industry or just in the video making industry in general?
Yeah, I mean, I've only got my own experience, but for me, it's just, you're a filmmaker if you say you are. So, get started and
Right.
and start making some films and start doing some stuff. And I mean, everybody's different. I personally kind of thrive by critiquing my work. Like, I love to, like, as soon as I'm done shooting anything, I'm looking for the flaws. Like, that kind of goes back to the whole idea of like the army, and you can't have excuses for anything, right? It doesn't do anything. There's no currency in excuses. So in terms of advice, you just got to get out there and do it. And man, I think you'll find out whether or not you're passionate about it,
Hmm.
because like you have to be, particularly if you're starting, if you're bootstrapping your way into this world, it's going to be kind of tough. And, if you love it, you'll get through that, and you know, but yeah, focus on building a network, meet other people. This is very much a team sport. And so you can get your sort of practice in by just simply helping other people, and you'll learn a lot through that. And then, like I said, build the network, that's where all your work comes from, or at least in my experience, that's where it comes from. Now, this
Love
is
it.
like the freelance side of things. And if you want to get in the union, I don't know, call your local union.
That's right. Well, Andrew, it was a pleasure. Thank you so much for just talking about your life, your story, and then your thoughts on just filmmaking, storytelling for brands, yourself, and advice for future filmmakers out there. Because
Yeah,
it's a tough road. You really do have to be passionate about it, and being passionate, being on sets for 12, 14 hours consistently,
hmm
and not complain if have to go run to get some coffee for somebody. But thank you so much for hopping on today. Before we go, can you let people know where to find you online and how can we support?
Oh yeah, Docs TV, Docs Dox dot TV, like television. And how you can support? Oh man, I don't know. Maybe should I give you my Venmo or something?
Yeah, yeah. PayPal, Venmo, OnlyFans,
I don't know. Tip the musicians.
Patreon.
Just go out there and watch stuff. I don't know, man. I think I'm good. I think I'm good. But anyway, this is fun. I'll be paying attention to your podcast, Mitchell. I enjoyed this conversation.
Most definitely. Well, thanks so much, Andrew. And yeah, good luck with all the work coming up and also building the company, and just have some fun. Man,
Thanks, man.
you have so many toys.
No,
I'm one of these days, let's just hop on some hoverboards and run around our gimbals.
I've got two Segways, so I'm ready.
Oh yeah. Well, thanks so much, Andrew.
Okay, see you, Mitchell. Bye now.
Thank you for listening to the Creative Haven podcast. And if you dig it and like what you heard today, please give us a nice review and rating and share it with one of your friends that you think needs some creative inspiration. You can always find more content and resources at thecreativehaven.com, and hit me up on Instagram at Mitchel Dumlao. And if you want to reach out, collab, or ask any questions, you have my permission to slide into my DMs. So keep positive, continue to learn and hone your craft, and create all day. Salamat.